This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance.
Hey, how's it going, Todd?
Good, dude. Sorry, I just had an interview. Lance Lambert, by the way, bovedainc.com. These are two-way humidity control packs, keeping your cannabis fresh. I mean, listen, they don't touch the plant at all. They're an ancillary to the product where it's legal in certain areas and not in others. But Lance has been great with our show for almost 3 years now. I was talking to like one of the prosecutors from the Avery case, Ken Kratz, and man, could that guy talk.
Oh, wow. I know how that can go. No worries at all, man. I'm on vacation, so it's all easy going for me.
Wait a second. You're working vacay now? What the hell, dude? Sorry to take your time.
No, just for you guys. Everyone else has been on the do not disturb list, but always love catching up with Todd, so it's all good.
Hey, man, whereabouts are you?
I'm actually home. It's crazy. For once, I'm happy to say we talked about it a little bit before, but this Q4 has been a little bit slower for travel for me. So I'm off the road until the first week of November when I head up to Eureka, which is in the heart of the Emerald Triangle, which is obviously kind of the growing capital, as it were, for California and the cannabis industry. So that's my next trip, but for now in Southern California.
And then the reason why I ask, I don't exactly know the proximity, but are those fires creeping around where you're at?
They are a little bit, yeah. Thanks for asking. The closest one is about 20 miles south of me. So the one down, the Getty Fire, as they're calling it. Luckily, it didn't cross over the hills, over Santa Monica towards me. But every time the winds kick up down here, it seems another fire. So thanks for thinking of me, but we're safe on this one.
Okay, good to know. I mean, I'm sorry for all those being affected, hundreds of thousands of people sort of being displaced and asked to evacuate. Do you see the smoke and stuff?
Yeah, we did. The one that was occurring over in Valencia or Canyon Country, which is, that one was about 25 miles east of us. Because of the winds, it did come across late last week. I was working up in my office, and all of a sudden just the sky turned yellow. You could start smelling the smoke. So we had to shut up close up the house and play it safe. But like I said, we just haven't caught a break this year. And unfortunately, I hate to say, it's a vicious cycle, right? So all the firestorms come, and then inevitably, it's rare, but we'll likely get rain. And then with rain comes flooding, and then that whole backlash from that. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this year, but that happened to us last year and the year prior, unfortunately.
My goodness. And I know, obviously, people being displaced, like I said. Do you know if any cannabis sort of farms or anything are being affected on this one?
Nope, not on this one. Been safe. A majority of the outdoor farms that are in Southern California are on the other side of me. So they're about a half hour to 45 minutes north of me in Santa Barbara County. So I sit in this little county called Ventura County. It's about 800,000 populace, but we're technically, I think, the smallest county that's associated with the LA market. So you have LA County on one side of us, you have Santa Barbara County on the other, and you have some huge grows. I mean, there's one of the largest grows up there is 18 acres. Another one's 1.1 million square foot greenhouse grow operation. Luckily, those guys are typically pretty safe. But there was about 2.5 years ago now where we had the worst fire in California history that occurred, again, just a half an hour north of me. So I don't know what it is, but these recent years it's just been out of control, quite honestly.
Yeah, sorry to hear that. On to cannabis news. One of the stats you sent us via the email to talk about was that the global CBD market looks like it's expected to grow up to 40% this year.
Yeah, and, not too much of a surprise. We talk about it a lot in North America because we've seen exponential growth of CBD both for the Canadian and the U.S. markets. But, really, when you look at the global scene, there is a substantial growth there as well. And as far as, countries where cannabis is either legalized at a medical or adult use recreational level, or it's been descheduled or deregulated, that consists of about 40 countries. But when you kind of add up everything, including those countries that have legalized CBD via hemp, you're talking about 50 countries globally where cannabis and or hemp is being manufactured for consumption. So that really does say that, this is moving full steam ahead, and it's not just in North America; it's in South America. It's very, very strong in Europe right now. That's where I see CBD growing as quick as North America, but even in Asia. And I think we talked about that before. China for centuries, technically, that's been one of their top cash crops is hemp. Typically more so for commercial and textile use, but now they're getting into more of the consumption hemp as well.
Good. I mean, that's very, very impressive to know someone who's considering and even talking to you and consulting with you about maybe going into the CBD market with a product base that's still a bit on the back burner, but not necessarily completely gone away by the wayside. But the marketplace does look huge. I've studied it significantly. Tell us about Michigan. They begin taking applications for the first recreational marijuana businesses starting this Friday, and that's obviously a state that's very connected to Ontario.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that's something that is proven to get an influence from you all as neighbors, right? So Michigan is definitely one of the larger states that's gotten attention this year with respect to legalization. I'd say Michigan, Oklahoma, and Florida are the three that most people are talking about as far as exponential growth. But for Michigan, yes, they're going to start accepting what they call recreational marijuana business applications as of 12:01 a.m. on November 1st. Technically, the office doesn't open for MRA until 8 a.m. on Friday. But they will be accepting licenses. And this is for everything from shops to delivery companies, grow operations, processors, testing facilities, event planners, even smoking lounges is part of the peripheral as far as legalization in Michigan. So really, unlike some states that kind of took a little bit of baby steps, not to pick on Colorado being the first adult use state, but they're still working through the whole the consumption lounges or public consumption side of things. So is the state of Nevada. Michigan kind of put it all out there on the line, but they are getting a lot of influence based on what they've seen in other states and again in other countries, specifically Canada, seeing what's been successful up there. So this is a big deal. I think there's going to be a lot of investors focusing on what's to come in Michigan.
I didn't realize that. So have they now across the board? Everything is legally recreationally.
Yes. Yep. So it's already been passed. These are the first steps to moving forward. The thing that's interesting as far as voting on legalization is that technically states have about a year for it to come into fruition. Our voting comes about in November, and then they have until a year from that following January to actually enact on those laws or those items that were passed during that actual voting period. So they're a little bit ahead of the curve here, which is great. We saw that in Nevada as well. Nevada voted in November. That would be technically November of 2017. They expedited the legalization and licensing process so that they were able to come online, as we say, by July 1st of the following year. So they very much expedited the process because they saw, matter of fact, that the state took out a loan for nearly $1 million, $980,000 to be specific, in order for them to launch their infrastructure around the program. But they saw the benefits of collecting the taxes that much sooner. They did some simple math and said, if we get online in July versus waiting until January of the following year, how many millions of dollars of taxes is that going to equate to? And of course, they paid off that loan within weeks, not within months. So.
Unreal. Lance Lambert, bovedainc.com, Boveda, keeping your flower fresh, #Boveda Cannabis, an ancillary product to the cannabis plant itself. Very successful company out of Minneapolis. Joins us. We have our favorite caller from Michigan. John from Michigan wants to chime in. I guess he must be happy. Hi, John.
Nice.
Hey, how are you, Todd? How are you, Lance?
Good, John.
Good to hear you again. I actually did not know about the Michigan application process taking effect. And I have told Todd before that I'm pretty much getting all my news source from basically the Canadian channels now. And I think that's a great step forward. I kind of wanted to touch on something you mentioned a few weeks ago with the West Coast and with the anomaly being Idaho and not being very progressive with their pot laws. And I've really kind of been thinking this over. And if you look at Idaho as a population, Idaho is a very, very conservative state. And I think it's kind of the anomaly out there and why they may not be as progressive as Colorado and Oregon and California, even though, they're completely surrounded by them. And I think that might be the big holdup for them out there.
I agree. And, one thing that did happen between then and now, I just got the news on, is that they are actually adding a vote for legalizing medical cannabis next year on their ballot.
Wow.
I'm excited to say. And I'll tell you, John, you'll get this. As far as things go, Utah, which shares a border, to your point with them, they passed yes on 2. Now we're going to be over a year ago since they did that. And I think that was a lot of influence, to your point, because there's a lot of similarities as far as demographic and overall size of populace between those two states. They have a lot that they kind of carry over in common, being conservative. So I think they're finally waking up, but you're spot on. They've got Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California is a skip away, Wyoming. I mean, it's kind of inevitable that sooner or later they needed to come around, right?
John, thanks for the update, dude.
You're welcome. I know you're coming up to the top of the hour. Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate it, man. A radio vet himself, John from Michigan, top of the hour. I love it. And always love his support.
We should have let him know, man. He should get a license. A consumption establishment license for Michigan is only $1,000 fee.
Oh, my God.
That'd be a good place for him. He's excited about the industry, man. We got to get him in motion.
I'm moving to Michigan. Real quick, South by Southwest has announced 24 marijuana panels for the 2020 festival. This is sort of the talk of the talk. Industry, of course, continually to boom if you stay away from looking at what's going on in the stock market side of things. But that's really bringing it to the forefront, isn't it, what they're doing? 20 panels at basically a music tech conference.
Yeah, 100%. And you're spot on, Todd. It's very much centric and known to be, focused on the music and the technology side of things as far as industries go. But South by Southwest does try to bring that forward thinking and kind of next level ideology towards what they present there. And while this isn't the first year for them to have any sort of focus or concentration on the industry as a whole, for them to your point, bring on 24, and they're bringing out some big players. They've got Troy Dayton from the ArcView Group that's going to be addressing how deschedulizing could obviously decimate the dispensary system and see the destruction of millions of dollars in investments and how normalization can shift things. So that's talking about descheduling cannabis. They have another one on duty bound, why the DOD, why they should embrace cannabis. And then even things like, cannabis in Canada. That's one of the topics is what we've learned. So you have panelists from Leafly, from Spirit Leaf, Tilray, 48 North, and Hill plus Knowlton that will be discussing the impacts of marijuana legalization specifically in Canada and what's been seen over the last year. So I think it's cool that they're bringing the diversity, even some more personal things. I have a friend, Brian Chaplin, who owns the Medicine Box. He's going to be talking about his fight with opioids, how he's able to overcome those with converting to cannabis and specifically tinctures in order for him to get through those dark times in his past. So I like how they're bringing this mix of kind of global as far as the industry goes, all the way down to personal. And so I think there's going to be a lot of good things that come out of it, to your point, giving a little bit more of a nod to the mainstream as far as insight to the industry.
Well, listen, Lance, we always appreciate the updates. We truly hope you enjoy the rest of your vacation. We're grateful for the time that you gave us during it. Also, bovedainc.com and their two-way humidity control packs are going to be featured over at MJ Biz in Las Vegas from the 9th to the 11th of December. And the Shapiro Show will be broadcasting from that very same conference and their booth. So we really look forward to partnering with you there and having a blast. And if people are out that way, I know it's one of the bigger conferences in the game. People have any questions, please come out and make sure you speak to us. And Lance and I working closely on many different things, and we always appreciate, your insight.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Todd. You guys have a good rest of the week.
Cheers, man. Bovedainc.com, Boveinc, Boveda Inc. Bovede, Inc.com. I got it right.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.